Mr. Duff, how are you?
Hey, Nick, how can you hear me? Is everything sounding good on your end?
Yep. Yep.
Great.
I wish I had better headphones for you, but I'm stuck in a rainstorm here, so
Where are you
it'll be
located?
these. I'm in Dominican right now, and typically it's between Jamaica and British Virgin Islands and then North America. So we kind of, we've got a clinic partner in the US that we work with, and then we've got our farm in Jamaica. We've got another farm about to be set up in the British Virgin Islands, and then we do retreats and clinics in both. So bouncing around a fair bit, but yeah. Dominican's the pass-through. Going from Jamaica to BVI is Dominica. It's just easier. So I'm here for a few days, seeing some friends, doing some kite surfing, and enjoying the rain.
Nice.
What about you, man? Where are you?
I live in northern New Mexico, kind of near the New Mexico-Colorado state line. So I'm up in the mountains.
Beautiful. That's a great spot.
Yeah,
really,
I've enjoyed it.
You can jump into Colorado when you want to, and then you can have some relaxing time in New Mexico. It's perfect.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I've just got a couple questions that I'd love to run by you and get your takes on.
Sure. Absolutely.
Great. So first and foremost, can I just get you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company, Wake Network, and how you got into this field of study?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the invite, Ty. My background really comes from the geek side, the tech side. I've been building and breaking technology products for 2 decades. And so that's how I kind of saw this opportunity in combination with my partner at the time. She was going through cancer treatment and really needed something to deal with a lot of the anxiety. And I just saw how psilocybin helped her, and it was just an amazing journey to watch. And then as my geek brain was going, I thought, how does this work? Like, what is happening? It's not just placebo, although placebo is a powerful thing. And that's how combining wearables with lab data, as well as actual psychometric data, kind of combining all that together, what can we learn? And how can that help inform other regulators around the world to maybe open up access, or other researchers to do more studies? So that's kind of hopefully gives you a bit of an idea of how I got into this whole space.
Awesome. Yeah. So I went to Jamaica when I was a much younger man, probably middle school. So what is that like? How did you initially decide upon that location? Is it because psilocybin's illegal there?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. The legality was a big piece of it. Although there's other jurisdictions, well, back then there was, and now there's more that are legal. But it was definitely that. Canada and Jamaica, Canada's where I was raised. They've got a really strong bond relationship, lots of flights. So I was always intrigued by it. I'd never been to Jamaica until we started Wake Network, late 2019, and went down there just before Christmas 2019. And then we set up our first retreat in February. So just before COVID kind of shut down the world, we were able to do our retreat. Had an amazing group of people down for 10 days. And that really launched the company in a big way. So that we had a lot of athletes, former pro and amateur athletes down on that retreat. We had some veterans, a really good mix of people. And we already knew it was a powerful medicine and, why we were starting it. But that really put everything together. And so a lot of the artwork, a lot of the photography you see on our website is from that original retreat. Now, COVID shut down the world, everybody went home, and I stayed. And that really was quite a way to learn a country. It was in lockdown, less tourism, less transient, passengers coming through. And it really allowed for me to explore without feeling rushed, a country that I'd never seen before. So it was wonderful. Jamaica really kind of welcomed me in, and I met a lot of amazing people and really traveled thousands of miles across the country. I've changed at least a dozen tires on the side of the road in Jamaica. It's a good country to test out a car, that's for sure. So and then we've expanded in the Caribbean, so we're expanding to the US and the British Virgin Islands with our work, and then obviously into near your neck of the woods into Colorado in the new year. So it's always kind of a game of progression, I guess. And we've met a lot of amazing people, and we're really excited to bring this to the world. Jamaica will always be our home, but we're very much driven by what we can do around the world with everything we've built.
So speaking of the legality of psilocybin, do you have a take on why it is illegal in the United States? Any of the political motivation behind that with the sweeping Psychedelics Act back in the 70s?
I mean, that's a loaded question, Ty. Yeah, of course it was. It was partial, I think, out of just hysteria, but that was probably drummed up by powers that be. There's something inherently kind of, I hate to use the word, but scary about psychedelics that a lot of people, even those that are more experienced, there's some wisdom to it. There's some wisdom beyond our years, and as humans, we're typically, especially in our Western world, trained and really guided that we are kind of the center of the universe, and we've figured it all out, and it goes against all of that. And I think that's scary for a lot of people, whether they're curious or they're from the medical world or they're from the political world. So I think, yeah, with Nixon back in 71, and that's kind of just tangentially, that's kind of how Jamaica ended up being legal, so to speak. They were signatories to the 71 UN resolution, but then they just didn't enact it. So they kind of said they would, and then they didn't do it, which is amazing for us. So it's not explicitly legal, but it's also explicitly not legal, and so it's
Right.
that gray area that Jamaica benefits from specifically. So yeah, I think it has now. Cannabis, you could say the same thing. It was a little earlier that cannabis was demonized, but it has a history. Anything that's something that is powerful is usually revered and unfortunately not enjoyed by the wide populace, especially the upper elite, usually because of what it could do and how it could affect their populace. So certainly I think that was definitely a piece of it.
I'm glad you just brought up Western philosophy. Do you have any takes on things that you've learned, Western philosophies on healing versus more the Eastern lines of thinking?
Oh yeah, definitely. The Western world, a lot of the people that we meet, they've been told by their medical providers, whether that's behavioral health or traditional, that their brain is broken. That's a common theme that I kind of was surprised to hear when I started this journey. And it just completely paralyzes the patient, that they don't have control, that it's done. It's just, you just now need to deal with it. So whereas the Eastern philosophies is that there's beauty in the so-called breaking, that things can be more powerful after, like the Japanese kind of ikigai. So and it's just a longer term philosophy, as far as how the viewpoint is much more, and it's probably somewhat related to capitalism being very transactional and very commercial, and there's always a fix, and you got to buy this, and you got to have this expert. Don't learn it on your own. That's scary. Just pay for everything. And so there's a similarity there where one system has a very long view, the East, let's call it, and then ours is much more short term, and ours is much more kind of paper over the problem. Don't deal with it. Take this pill, take this course, go on a trip. So that really spoke to me quite a bit, because I'm very much as I said earlier in our interview here, is that geek tech is my world. So it's very much a fast-paced world. So I'm more kind of driven to that side of things. Psychedelics, seeing how it's affected my being and my body, my mind, as well as others, has really taught me that these binary viewpoints of a lot of things in our world are not real. They're just a story that we just keep retelling and keep subsuming, and reality is a lot more interesting, I think, where there is a circle, a continuum, a long term that needs to be looked at, and that the things I guess the number one is that the things that we can't see or touch are no less real than the things that we can. And so those are definitely some that I've learned along this journey.
Yeah, that's interesting you brought that up. I've always thought it was kind of silly how people talk like, I have depression, I have anxiety, as if it's this permanent thing that you're just stuck with forever. And you have to be either on pharmaceutical medication for the rest of your life, but that it's not something that you can deal with and fix and cure yourself from.
Yeah, I mean, it does promote just taking something every day for the next 5 decades, right? It's just crazy to think that many of other pieces of healthcare is kind of like, this is the regimen, do it, you'll be better, you're good. And then when we enter the behavioral health or the mental health space, there's no studies on taking people off of these drugs. So then the doctors are told, be careful, there's no studies, and it's like, well, why would the drug company study, the deprescribing of an antidepressant on a population? It's better to have a group like doctors and like patients that are kind of like, don't shake the boat. I know you're not where you wanted to get to, but just, it's better than what you could do. And it's just like that fear, uncertainty, doubt that billions are made on. So, I don't want to be a complete anti-big pharma kind of guy. I think that there's a space and a place for it. But there's just such margin for fuckery, let's call it, where there's it's incentivized. So there's a moral hazard for the powers that be that are running these shows not to do certain things because, why would they? So I think a more educated populace, which is happening. I feel like, it's not just where I hang out. I think there is overall, I think society started to wake up to the realities of marketing, advertising, and lobbying, and etc. I think we've, at least majority wise, seems to people have woken up and they're starting to question a lot more. So that hopefully will allow people to take their own mental health and physical health into their hands a little more. I think there's always experts, and there should be, but I think the first line should be, kind of exploring what's going on with yourself and with careful practitioners that have been doing this for millennia, at least as a human, right? That should be available. So one of our mantras at Wake has been to make natural psychedelics a first line of treatment option, and rather than the last, which is really what we've noticed doing our retreats and our clinics. It's usually we're the last port of call for a lot of people. So if they could have this as an opportunity first, they can choose. Of course, it's human nature, and it should be a human right, but at least it should be an option.
Just to pivot for a second towards your retreats and what you do, I read the ESPN article that came out about the work you all are doing, and it deeply impacted me because I was a Division I football player several years ago. So I feel like I can relate to some of those people. But in your experience running these clinics and retreats, who are some of the people who come to seek this type of therapy, like the common struggles maybe that you've seen between people, and why they're coming for this experience?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's all walks of life. We've really met all ages, all socio-demographic backgrounds, many countries. So there's certainly a commonality of people that are curious. Our retreats are very clinical, so we have a licensed U.S. trained either nurse or doctor on site, as well as a therapist, as well as our actual ceremony team. So we really do have a very close to, or even better than, a 1-to-1 ratio of staff to participant. So we're not getting the people that are just coming down for fun. It's very much the way that our kind of site and our intake is built is really for people that are coming for more of a medical lens. Now everybody suffers from depression and anxiety somewhat. I mean, I think that's just normal as a human. Now, obviously, when it gets to be, more than people want to deal with or cannot deal with it, then that's when we meet a lot of people. So there's definitely a lot of and they're comorbid to each other. I've never met somebody who has only one 100%, but obviously one or the other kind of takes precedence a lot of the time. So I think that's the underlying behavioral health issue, if you want to call it that people come down for. TBI causes people to like receive those symptoms more. It exacerbates the problem of depression and anxiety and traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress. TBI does. So it has, and we've seen this in the chemistry, that the hormone levels of people that have had a TBI, either multiple minis or a large one or both, do have injury to the pituitary gland, and that has affected their hormone regulation. So you only see this once you do a blood panel, and we've partnered with Dr. Gordon and a wonderful clinic down in Jupiter, Florida, Access Medical, that does our panels for us, and that has been a very interesting side note, I guess, in our journey, because it wasn't something that we thought of in the early days. That if people can have their hormones checked and kind of put into a good path towards normalcy, then they have a better experience with us under psychedelics, and then some of these comorbidities, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, start to lower, at least somewhat. So that's been an interesting one. Because of that lens, we've had a lot of athletes, we've had a lot of veterans come down, veterans from multiple different countries. That seems to be a big group. We did the work with ESPN and love that piece. It's really, I don't know if you've seen the documentary that attached, but it's wonderful. It actually got nominated for an Emmy this year, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
So it's the sports Emmys will be next week. So we're happy just to have the nomination though. So veterans athletes have been a big piece. I'd say probably just under the majority of our guests. We've had some patients with end-of-life anxiety come down. It's a lot of people that are stuck, whether they're stuck with the medical system, they're stuck in their own world, they're stuck with mental, kind of that loop that the psilocybin helps quite a lot with the default mode network being shut down. People that are in that rut seem to find us in a lot of ways. So we love just being a part of their journey. I mean, there's no fixed, there's no healed. It's just like, it's kind of like a ride on the journey that we get to be a part of with them. And really the integration after the actual ceremony is so crucial. We do say, and we don't mean it lightly, that it's when the work really starts. Mm-hmm. And then if people need to come back, then obviously the door is always open. So hope that answers. It's such a tough one, Ty. We've had around 400 people come down. NFL, NHL, UFC, boxing, wrestling, snowboarding, skiing, soccer, a lot of footballers, and then just everybody. It's so I got to thank Joe Rogan, and there's a long list of others, but to making it normal, or at least more normal, and then that curiosity is bringing more people down. And then when they come down and have a good experience, then they tell a few, and it's definitely one of these kind of worlds where it's growing quickly, and it's just wonderful to be a part of it.
Sure. I think perhaps I just got lucky or had some form of intuition, but my first time experiencing any psychedelic, it was psilocybin, but I was on my couch, complete dark at night, headphones in, just quietly meditating and listening to music and getting that experience with beautiful closed eye visuals. What exactly is the protocol that you use for patients who come to you? Like, how does that work?
Sure. Well, before they get on the plane, there's an inclusionary protocol of questions that they need to kind of fill out, and sometimes there's a one-on-one required with our medical team, depending on that approval process, and then they're met in a group call with the other participants. So we do a group call prior to the actual retreat, so where everybody can just meet on Zoom. And then when they arrive, everything's all inclusive. So we pick them up directly from the airport, a private shuttle. We bring them right to our retreat location. Everybody arrives at different times, but usually kind of sometime in the afternoon between 12 and 5, everybody arrives at our location in Jamaica or the British Virgin Islands. And that's where they get a tour of the property. We check them into their room, and we basically say, enjoy the property, and we'll all meet at dinner, which is usually around 7 or 7:30 p.m. So then we kind of break bread together. We have a good time and discussions and cover any questions that they may have. And everybody has an early night. The next day starts with breathwork, meditation, yoga at around 8 a.m. And I say around because sometimes there's a later arrival. And so we want everybody to feel rested. So sometimes things move by 30 to 60 minutes. And then after that, then it's breakfast time. And then we start a fun day where they come to the ocean or to the waterfalls, where everybody just has like a nice group activity. It's really great for bonding and just breaking the ice and kind of, the tension is not the right word, but like, it's kind of, everyone's nervous. And so that helps. And then everybody comes back and we start our one-on-ones and our medical, where we check their blood pressure, their heart rate. We have an EEG device on site where we do a 5-minute resting and a 5-minute active EEG reading. That has been really interesting because we've learned that there's particular brainwave types that is more helpful for something like a psychedelic dose. And so we leverage some binaural audio to help guide them into a particular kind of brainwave state prior. And then we answer any questions that they have. We ask them about their previous use. We basically titrate and personalize their dosing, as well as plan, if they want to go deeper in the experience, what their upper dose, or what we call a booster, would be. And so then everything's ready. The location we do the actual dosing is outside on the porch looking out at the water. Beautiful location. So they feel outdoors, but they're still kind of indoors. And then we either have a live musician on site, or we have recorded audio that starts the ceremony with our amazing ceremony guides. And so from there, we have our medical team that's there watching, trying to be kind of out of the way, but close enough if anybody has any questions or needs them. And the dosing usually lasts 4 to 5 hours, depending on if people go deeper or not, as far as more dosing. And then when they come out, we have a wonderful vegetarian meal waiting for them. That's really up to them if they want to sit and talk, if they want to take it to their room. It's, everybody's different, so we don't kind of require any attendance, so to speak, afterwards. And then we have a big bonfire together. And then the next day is very much a repeat of the first, only that we don't take them for a fun little excursion. They get some time to sleep in. It's a little later start that day, and we start later, which means they come out at night. So everybody gets a day therapy, a day dose, and a night dose. Now we have integration circles after each dose, and as I said, there's a therapist on site that can talk one-on-one if people prefer that. And then everybody's by day 4, which is usually we do 4 days and 5 days. By day 4, there's one last integration. So there's 3 integration times in the whole journey, kind of prior, after the first, and after the second. And then everybody heads back to the airport, and then we continue virtually. So we have a full platform called Wake Well, where people can connect in, they can talk, they can ask questions. It really helps people kind of along the journey, and combines a number of behavioral health modalities like ACT that we found really help people. And then the network just continues. So we have a group chat on Signal where everybody can just chime in at any time. It's just for that retreat specifically. And I'm in all of them, and we get group chat messages every day from different groups over the months and years. And it's just wonderful to see people share a screenshot or a photo of themselves, where they're at, how they're doing. It's been an interesting one. So it's not just the retreat itself. It's kind of a very much work before, and then a lot of conversation and help if needed afterwards.
Just to pivot again, I myself am a huge advocate of cannabis. I love it. However, I've had some absolutely horrific experiences with synthetic cannabis, like Delta 8. What are the differences between synthetic psilocybin and maybe just eating a cap itself?
Great
Are there
question.
any differences?
Certainly are, yeah. What you have with synthetic is what the world of medical, let's call it, is comfortable with, which is single compound. And so it's amazing that just that is still having a remarkable effect. So you have the mushroom, the cap, as you said, it has a number of compounds inside of it. The ones that we're interested in, let's say, is obviously psilocybin. Then there's psilocin, which is what psilocybin is turned into in your body. And then there's baeocystin, norbaeocystin, and a really interesting one called originacin. And so those are all these interesting compounds inside of the mushroom that we don't know a whole lot about. We know that they work. We know that they're great. We don't know how they differ. But we do know that if you take one of them out, psilocybin or psilocin, and you put it into a synthesized process, which uses benzene, then you're going to have still remarkable effects. So it just speaks to how powerful the compound mixture, or the magic mushroom, so to speak, is, because you can take one of the compounds out and it still is amazing. So my kind of proponent nature is on psilocybin being natural is really around that combination is important. Now, we don't know enough at all. There hasn't really been any studies on baeocystin, norbaeocystin, or originacin on their own. Every study you read about is usually synthetically created psilocybin, helping things like depression, anxiety, etc. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that when you hear about a study, and they'll mention magic mushrooms because everybody kind of draws that correlation, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, it's really actually synthetic that's being tested. I'd say 95% of the time it is. Now, some of my friends have actually done the study, and they haven't published, so I won't speak to any of the results. I don't know them, but they've done a synthetic versus natural study out west in British Columbia was where I know some of the dosing was, but I think the researchers are out of University of Washington, at least my buddies are. So that'll be interesting to explore. What does that data reflect? I know one of the participants, he said it was very fast on, fast off with the synthetic, and it felt a little more mechanical, but that could have been, you're shading it with the knowledge of it being synthetic, or at least thinking it's synthetic. So hopefully that helps. The interesting thing, it's so many ways to look at it. Like psilocin doesn't get any cred, unfortunately, in kind of popular culture. Everybody knows psilocybin. Yeah. Which is very interesting, because it is psilocybin is just a prodrug to psilocin. So psilocin is really kind of the popular one, if you want to make one popular. That in an IV format, because the body doesn't have to convert it, is really interesting, because then you can speed up the uptake. You don't need that liver interaction. You could do something like an inhaler or intramuscular or IV to be very similar, at least, to try and partner or help the groups that are using ketamine, because it's faster acting. A lot of the things that people like about ketamine could be said the same for psilocin if it was IV or IM. So there's an interesting opportunity there, but I'm very much all compounds. The downside is that if you want to prescribe something like psilocybin, because it's so many different compounds, it's basically going to be impossible with the FDA the way it is, and how studies are intended. And I do understand, and I'm a supporter that you need to test every compound, because how do you know what's working? But that causes the issue, and that's why you see synthetic cannabinoids, because cannabis has even more terpenes and compounds. So it's an interesting one. I think you're going to see synthetic psilocybin, synthetic psilocin, maybe some combinatorial products down the road, because they would have to be down the road. Obviously, you have to test one on their own, and then combinatorial. I think, and then you're going to have kind of the underground, or the grow your own, which will be natural. and that's probably where it's headed. Just looking at why is MDMA ahead of all these others? Well, it's because it's able to be tested a lot easier and studied a lot easier, and so the approvals come faster. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I think personally, I would try synthetic because of, obviously if safety's confirmed, then I'd love to try it. But there's been so many competitors of ours, friends, I guess, in the industry who have gone down that path of, we're going to make a synthetically created or synthetic derivation of the magic mushroom, and we're going to raise $100 million to do it. And I've always thought, like, the magic mushroom is the competitor, let's call it, in your world, in their world. Yes, you see some deficiencies, you want to make it faster on, faster off, whatever. But the money you're going to put in is going to need to be made back later. At least that's what your investors are expecting. So how much are you going to have to charge for it? And how is that going to compete with, $10 a gram for mushrooms, which is kind of the price it's always been and probably will always be. And there's not a big answer for that. I mean, a hero's dose would be $50. So, quantifying a synthetic route that's going to be covered with revenue, insurers, etc. It's always seemed so dicey of a proposition. Not to say it won't happen, but I think that there's a big competition when it comes to a natural thing like psilocybin, and it'll be interesting to see how it scales out.
What's your experience been like with the FDA, DEA? Are they adversarial when it comes to these substances that are illegal, or do they work with you? I'm just curious. How does that go?
They work with us. Yeah, surprisingly. They are, they just have a structure, and that structure is for good and maybe bad, but I think it's for good reason. And if you can fit into that structure, then, everything's fine. And so we've done multiple imports of our psilocybin to the US for testing and analytics. So we've worked with the DEA quite a bit, and they've been wonderful. You just need to be very, specific about your steps and follow them to the T, and then you're okay. So yeah, we haven't had any issues whatsoever. I think there's truly interest on their side to bring this to more people, but we, the industry, have to do the work. We can't expect, all of these changes, because maybe they'll come, but that's going to take a while. If we can work within their models, and they do have a natural products pathway, then we can make progress. I mean, if you look at MAPS and how Rick Doblin and his group were able to bring MDMA to where it is today, I mean, it's amazing. And a lot of the haters, so to speak, would have said 30 years ago, there's no way the FDA will approve MDMA. And it's happened. It will happen in a few months here. So yeah, I think they do get a lot of flack. Maybe it's well worth, the flack they get, depending on the viewpoint you have. But from ours, we've had a really good experience.
So it does seem like MDMA will be the first domino to fall, in your opinion.
Then federally, yeah.
Do you think there's a timeline for psilocybin or substances that are similar to that? I know that's a hard question, but just based on your interactions with the government, what do you think?
It's tough. I mean, cannabis looks like it's the first Schedule 1 reclassification. So at least, of the plant world, the illegal plant world, that'll be a big driver of kind of timelines as far as things like psilocybin. And then you have things like peyote and iboga. They're all very similar as far as they're natural. They work without being refined, or you don't really have to do much to them. So there's not like a value added process required. I think it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. There's going to be a lot of people that are helped by MDMA. So there might be a discussion internally in the regulators, maybe just of the US, but worldwide, to say, let's just give it 5 years and see how this shakes out. Don't make any big changes, G20, let's just see. That's likely what's going to happen. I think the fact that there's multiple compounds inside of psilocybin, and also the fact that most people don't want to do synthetic, although if it was synthetic or nothing, I think a lot of people would. I think that's going to delay things a little bit, but we'll have a state-by-state rollout. So the federal may be less and less needed. with a state-by-state rollout, just like cannabis did. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully Biden does come through with the reclassification of cannabis this year. That'll really breathe a lot of life into a lot of the others that are in similar trajectories. I'd say recreational psilocybin is probably a very far, thing. But medically, we're very much confident that California is coming soon. Colorado's already kind of announced that that'll be, looks like January or so. Oregon is already there. So it's exciting times. My home country, Canada, has been slow, unfortunately. We've got some amazing people like Therasil that we work with and that we've helped, and there's a lot of amazing people in Canada really pushing us forward. And hopefully we're if not the first federal G20 like cannabis, one of them early on.
With legalization, do you worry at all about the big pharmaceutical companies getting a hold of this stuff?
I mean, I worry about it. Yeah, you've got to have a concern about it, but at the same time, it's like, just do the work, like you could worry and get yourself into all wrapped up in anxiety. And it's like, how's that going to help? It's, I think if we can, like what we're doing from our side is let's bring the best of class monitoring and testing to this space so that people feel more comfortable, and that it isn't an us versus them as far as synthetic is, very much the gold standard, and natural, who knows? Like, we really want to kind of make it more of an even playing field with regards to some of the analytics that are done, how we're monitoring people before, during, after. A lot of the studies that we're either being a part of as an advisor or actually putting on ourselves are really around that. It's how do we kind of at least level the playing field between synthetic and natural, to say that there's certainly a place here. It's not something to be scared of. I think that's where I focus my time, because big pharma's it's huge, and it's built on quarterly profits, and it will continue to be. So there's obviously, some things that you need to keep in mind, but at the same time, there's so much work to be done and so many people that can benefit from this, that in our 200 plus countries in the world, I feel like there's always going to be somewhere that natural can exist, and we'll continue to spend our time in those places.
Yeah. The more that I research this stuff and just learn and ingrain myself into the topic, the more I've learned about mushrooms in general and how amazing of an organism they are, even if they're not psychedelics, like lion's mane, just how beneficial that is for memory and for brain function. Is that something that you and your company look into at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a line of non-psychedelic, let's call it, mushrooms. So that's lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, and cordyceps. And they are amazing. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's they work very synergistically. So I usually take lion's mane and cordyceps together. That's like a really good starter for the day. They're both good for energy as well as brain fog, minimizing it, things like neurogenesis, neuroplasticity. So those are my two. And then we've had a lot of pet owners actually reach out for turkey tail for their dogs, because it's been proven. Yeah, it's been proven in a number of studies to help with tumors, specifically with and without the use of chemotherapy. So we do look at it. We haven't done a lot of studies on it. We promote it. We've grown it at our farm in Jamaica, where we've got a number of partner programs and partner offerings that are coming out in the market fairly soon. One being Lion's Brain, which is our kind of our multi-dose. So that'll be more than just lion's mane in the pill, but just amazing for focus and decreasing brain fog. So that we had a batch that all sold out. We have another bottle run that's happening as we speak, so we'll have that back in stock end of June. I'd love to send you a bottle, because Ty, it's just one of the best products we've ever made, and really, really happy about it, and everybody's just crazy for it. So I'll send you a bottle to try. Love to hear your thoughts on it. But yeah, I think there's going to be what I'm really intrigued on outside of psychedelics, because that's really what brought me to and keeps me in a big way to this in this space, is other formats. Like what we have now is dried powder, and that doesn't mix very well. And then you've got, the extracts, but a lot of the time the extracts don't keep all of the compounds. So you've got a big opportunity, I feel, to have something that's, I don't know if it's tincture or a powder that dissolves quicker, whatever it ends up being, that brings mushrooms, functional mushrooms, into any product. And I feel like that step is going to be an interesting one that will happen, so that we can have lion's mane in anything. It could be in a cereal, it could be in a tea, a coffee. That'll be interesting, and I just hope somebody does it. We're not trying to do everything over here.
Yeah. You mentioned neuroplasticity. I'm curious to get your take on this. Clearly, the psilocybin has benefits for healing and for trauma, but I'm curious, do you think there's any potential to use psilocybin mushrooms as a performance enhancer in some way, whether it's studying or athletics, just with the increased neural connectivity that it provides? What do you think about that?
100%. Yeah. We've noticed. It's interesting, some of the parallels in nature, in the brain, when you have something like a near death experience, and afterwards, you're shaken up, and everything seems like it's slowed down. That's truly how the brain sees it, because with that release of dopamine and a number of other compounds, it is making your aperture bigger. You are seeing the world in a fast motion, but it's slow motion as far as your ability to kind of remember what happened and see things as they're happening, even though it's normal speed. The same window opens up after psychedelics. And so there's a lot of work around putting somebody into that space. Obviously, you don't want a near-death experience every day to help study in calculus, but a similar kind of thing where they have that experience, and then they're 30 minutes, they spend 30 minutes studying something or thinking of something. That helps quite a lot, is opening up this window and then using that window for training, for learning. The UFC boys that we work with, that's a big piece of how they train and how it helps them, and how it kind of triples it. They call it triple down, where they'll do a particular exercise and it's like it's been tripled down. And we've seen that as well in the research with writing. If you don't type on your phone, but you actually write physically, it's like it's been double confirmed by the brain. So if you hear something and then you actually write it down, it's going to be remembered better. So combining all of these things is certainly early days, but we know it works, and we'll continue to kind of bring it into our studies. So we do a combination of lion's mane, cordyceps, as well as some anti-inflammatories for the brain in our TBI protocol that we do with athletes, former athletes. And that's with the blood test I mentioned earlier. So it's kind of like it's a 90-day protocol where they start with a blood test, they start with an interview, and they start on a regimen of our supplements. And then they come down in week 5 to one of our retreat locations, go through our typical 2 or 3 day dosing, depending if it's 4 or 5 days. And then they go through the remaining 7 weeks of their treatment in the protocol. And we're mixing things like ACT therapy, neurofeedback, supplements, as well as obviously psychedelics, all in one kind of cohesive package that does level up on itself, so that you're having kind of the benefits of one helping the other. So it's quite an interesting cohesive offering we do.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Nick, I super appreciate your time. I could talk about this stuff all day, but I'm not going to keep you here. The last question that I have for you, this is not related to mushrooms at all, is just business-wise. As far as starting a business, scaling, things of that nature, is there anything that you can speak on that's worked for you, or advice that you have?
Wow. Lots, Ty. There's pick your partners very carefully. You're going to be in a marriage, right? So that kind of goes without saying, but should be said. We've had some great partners, and I'm really thankful for that. So that's been, definitely a helpful thing. I've seen a lot of our kind of competitors in the space when things get tough, it doesn't work out. Scalability. A lot of people don't think about scale. Scale is so important because, it's everything, so I'm obviously from the geek side of things. You can sell 1,000 copies of something while you're sleeping, if it's technology, if it's software. But if it's a sandwich restaurant, you can't sell 1,000, while you're sleeping. Somebody needs to be there. Somebody needs to buy stuff. You might not be able to put 1,000 people through in a day, regardless of how much you want to. Scale is something to really keep in mind, that a lot of people forget. So I'd say, and you have to be incredibly passionate about what you want to do. Like, just do not jump into something because you see dollar signs. It's just like the biggest waste of your time, because it won't work out. As soon as you hit a bump in the road, you're just not going to be able to just get up the next day and do the same thing and drudge through the rain and all that stuff. So be passionate, focus on scale, and be picky. Don't just marry the first frog that comes along.
That's awesome. That's all I've got for you. Is there anything that I might have missed or that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Tyler's great questions. No, I think that's good. I think we leave it there and we could catch up in the future sometime.
Sounds great. Is there any links or specific ways that people can reach you or learn more about what you all are doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Wake.net is our corporate site. Wakewell.net is more of our functional mushrooms and the tech side of things. And then I'm on the Twitters, the X, as well as LinkedIn, just as Nick Murray. So happy to hear from any of your fans. I'd love to talk mushrooms and tech. So,
all right. Great. Thank you so much for your time. That was awesome. I learned so much, and hopefully people out there will learn something from you as well. So seriously, thank you so much.
Oh, anytime, Ty. Have a great day.